Oh, we're rolling right now?
Yeah, he's slated. We're going.
Oh, look at those
rolling.
red lights.
Welcome to the Denim Podcast.
Yay. Denim on denim on denim on denim on denim on denim.
Where
Yes.
we'll be discussing all of our favorite denims.
Yeah, how often you wash it, if you do or
you
don't.
wash denim?
I'm Jason at Walrus Audio here with Matt.
That's Jason.
From Matt
Yep.
from.
Oh, I'm also from Walrus Audio.
Yeah, and we're here with
Hi, I'm Ian.
Ian from.
I don't know, like maybe the internet?
From Ian.
Yeah,
I guess.
from Ian's internet.
Yeah.
From Ian's corner of the internet.
Yeah, right.
Talking about.
The mantle.
That guy.
I mean,
The
look at this.
mantle.
Can we get it? Can we
Show it to
Just
some
like
camera
here?
lens somewhere.
Maybe.
Yeah.
All three
Maybe.
cameras.
Yeah.
It's
So
finally here.
it's here. We're going to get into it, how this thing came about. First, why don't we just talk, like, how did we meet? I don't even know how we
Well,
met.
you and I met on a Zoom call after
That's fairly common. Yeah.
know it is.
For me, which is
Yeah.
funny.
but we met at NAMM.
We met at NAMM.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you approached Sharon and I. So SBL, Scott's Bass Lessons YouTube channel that I work on and for. We were there with Scott's Bass Lessons and you came up. And I remember talking to you. And after you left, Sharon and I looked at each other and we were like, we like that guy. Like that guy is great. And you know, interactions at NAMM can vary. Right. And sometimes you kind of get a vibe of like, people just want to talk about their products.
Yeah.
And you wanted to talk about products, but you also were like, you're so cool.
Wow.
Just want to spend time.
Yeah. You're being nice because we've now made a product together.
we have.
But
it was cool. And I, of course, knew about Walrus and what you guys did.
yeah.
And so we started to talk and I started to check out some of the stuff you guys did.
yeah.
And you made Canvas,
Right. So my side of the NAMM story
Okay,
is
sorry. Yeah.
I started genuinely as a fan, like genuinely as a fan of you, Sharon, Scott, everything you guys are doing. So I got to meet you guys at NAMM and hang out. And yeah, we talked about product, but I really just wanted to like meet you guys. I was
It's just fanboy a little bit.
a little
It's
bit
fine.
of
It's
fanboy.
fine.
Yeah, I'm not above it. And so I think we had just come out with like the tuner. I'm looking at a pedal board over here, but we had just come out with the tuner and a few other things in the Canvas series.
Yeah.
And I sent you some of that stuff after NAMM, just to play with, just to get your thoughts and whatever. And then I think that's when you called with this, what would eventually become the Mantle,
Yeah.
as an idea for the Canvas series.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. It was like the aesthetic of the Canvas series is good, but also like high performance. And so you kind of pitched this idea of a bass specific DI.
Yes.
And it's like utility. Like it makes sense. Like
Right.
it at first glance, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. But what you didn't know at the time was that we were about to drop the Maracai, which is sort of this like, it was the start of this sort of experimental line for us of like, no cost cut, like build it to be the thing we dream it could be. And the finishes, going above and beyond on the finishes to make it just really great. And so the more you were pitching like where you could see this fitting in the market and what you could see it being, in the back of my head, I was like, Canvas is really cool, but like, I don't think this is a Canvas product.
Right.
So then the Maracai came out and you called and were like, this thing is beautiful.
Beautiful.
And I was
Yes.
like, well, what if we did that?
Yeah.
And so I feel like that's kind of how it started.
I know.
That's how it got to like the home that it would eventually, land in.
And dude, do you remember like when we jumped on that Zoom call, I was talking about wanting something that was like, okay, what if we could build something like, let's just say hypothetically, you could spend any amount of money on the parts and like we could build a really premium product. Like what could that look like? Like let's start with this sort of like blue sky thing. And I feel like you got excited. You were like, whoa.
Yeah.
And we were
totally.
talking about, we were throwing around words like Neve and API and custom transformers. And, we were trying to build a box that was pointing toward like classic studio.
For sure. Yeah.
Language and architecture. And I have always wanted that to exist
Cool.
for years and years and years. something outside of the tube world.
Right,
So not
right.
like a tube driven thing, but something more like a classic.
Bring a piece of rack gear on the road with you.
Exactly.
At your feet. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Like when the whole cost, retail price, like all that discussion started coming up, we were realizing that there's a lot of room for kind of going big. And it's not necessarily that it's so much better than something else we do. It's just not what we typically do. It's not how we typically think about a guitar pedal, right? But then, yeah, starting down that road, the obvious thing really quickly that came to mind was like, let's use real iron. Let's use real transformers in this thing that are chunky and beefy and like just play into the signal integrity and like what that's doing to the sound, the character, like bring that character to this thing. And so like we were really excited to like go down that road. So
yeah. And so not to jump too far ahead, but like you had a lot of cool restraint to it too. That was, you know, like even before we started designing, you were like, it can't have 10 knobs. In fact, it can't have 5 knobs. It can't have, you know, like you had a very clear vision of like the thing you thought needed to exist.
Yes.
Which for us was like super helpful, where it's like, we're not guessing what someone who has a reputation for great bass tone would want in this. You're just like telling us.
yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, and I think there's also a lot of great products out there that have a bunch of knobs and a bunch of features.
Sure.
Right? There's tons of companies that give you a box full of like stuff. And I think, and there are people that really like that. I want something really simple that I know is like the feature set didn't drive the price point. The components and the internal tone drove the price point. That's what I want. Because that's sort of how I feel like API, Neve, you know, SSL. I feel like that's what's driving those things in every major studio. So that's sort of what I want to carry with me. And so, yeah, in the beginning, I was like, I don't want it to be stereo. I don't want it to have, extra knobs to do other things. And that was like that was difficult to like, it's easy to make something full of stuff, but it's really difficult to make something very simple.
I'll say it again. I say it all the time, but my favorite like design rail to like keep us where we need to be is it's all about what you don't put on the pedal.
Yeah. Right.
Right. And so when you started talking about that was just music to my ears.
Oh,
I was
cool.
Like, that's how I think all the time.
Yes.
Bass music
And-
to his ears.
Yeah, that's right.
It's
Like
hard.
Seinfeld, maybe.
It's hard, right? That philosophy is not easy.
Yes.
Like, and you said it, it's like, it doesn't mean that it's fewer features. So it's going to be easy to make. It's actually fewer features. It's going to be harder.
Really hard. Yes.
Cause there's no room to hide.
Right.
Right. And then we went down the road of toying around with, step switches instead of potentiometers. And again, I love that.
I'm
it's
so
totally
happy you love
recreatable.
I mean, could we do
Do
like
it.
Oh, a little ASMR. That's the good stuff.
Okay, so 2 things about the stepped knobs. They're all 3 of them are, right? And one thing that's so cool is it sort of brings up that studio language design thing again, right? Like when you're clicking the EQ points or the gain step on like a 1073 Neve, you have that satisfying like tactile feeling.
Yeah. And recallability built in, right? Like,
you know, you're at a 5 and then a 7 on the bass knob or whatever.
I'm a 7
it is.
guy. I'm a 5 guy.
Exactly.
Cool,
yeah. And you can even visually see it, know that it's there, not that like it's kind of maybe in between, you know, but also the live component that rack gear never has to deal with.
Right.
Is when you're on stage and you have to strike your board because there's another band playing or whatever, and then you bring the board back in, or someone brings your board back in. It's crazy. It's madness. This cable, this XLR cable, goes across your pedal board and rolls down your bass knob. It will never happen on this.
Right.
Like I had to. That's hard to do.
If it does, you know right where you keep it. You know, you just snap it back.
That's right. But I've had on numerous occasions with, you know, really easy to turn knobs that aren't stepped, something happen on a DI that has a bunch of knobs on it, and then it's the stage is dark.
Yeah.
There's a blackout before the band goes on, and I'm looking down and I play, and there's no bottom end in the signal, or vice versa.
Yeah.
Everything got dimed.
Yeah.
And it's horrible.
As
and,
it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Right. That's
you
what it
don't
is.
start out dimed?
Yeah,
Dude,
yeah.
what's the... Yeah.
I thought that's what you do when you buy a new pedal. You just turn everything to 10 or 11.
11.
And
Yeah.
hope for the best.
But like the step thing to me is so applicable on stage.
Yeah.
Too. Even though it sort of feels like it began in studio world.
Right. But
it's so nice on
it
stage.
makes so much sense to bring it to the stage.
Yes,
you
it
know?
really
Yeah.
does. And it's just so much fun to use. So, right, I know the switches were like expensive.
They are.
They're also like, I know the knobs are big, but the first person to pull the back off of that to see the actual size of those
The switches are huge.
They're huge.
Yeah.
The first ones that I saw when Ezra brought them in, I was like, oh, what is this thing?
Oh, and shout out to Ezra too for
Yeah.
just like
Massive.
being such a monster
Yeah.
in the design of this thing, and just fielded so many phone calls and text messages from me of like, dude, do you think you could send me the curve of what the cut and the treble is? I mean, he was so nice to me, like after work hours. I'm like, I'm so sorry. But I mean, I was just really passionate. I wanted to get it right.
Yeah.
So did he. Of course, so did you guys. Also, just the knobs. I know like the knobs you make for the Maracai, it would have just been easier to use those.
Sure.
And that would have been fine.
Yeah.
But they were a little bit smaller and a little taller.
Quite a bit taller.
Right.
And
And you put them on.
yeah. And Jason in a set of calipers was like, this isn't going to do.
Yeah. I was like, I'm making us a new knob and it's going to fit
That's
this
so
thing.
sick.
Yeah.
And you 3D printed a
yeah.
prototype, right?
Several prototypes, yeah.
Bro.
Set them all in the box, look at them, look at the aspect ratio, the like how they fill in on the enclosure.
Standoff height, like the gap between.
That was
like,
all intentional.
So
yeah.
intentional.
Thank you for
I
doing
didn't
that.
want them to like hover way off the enclosure, you know. So they
Yes.
just like they clear it with enough room, but looks like they're just sitting right on top.
It's beautifully designed.
I love how it came out. Thank you. So back to the switches, back to the steps. Why don't we get into the EQ knobs? Because back to the whole idea of few controls making choices. We made some serious choices
Big
when
time.
it comes to the EQ
Yeah,
knobs. They
right.
don't just shelf, boost, cut. You know, it's
Yes.
like not that.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, so there's, and I'm going to try to speak clearly about this because it's sort of easy for this to go over heads, I think. But essentially, it's like three types of EQ
Yep.
that are happening here. And I have to give a shout out. I've talked to a bunch of my friends about like, what are you looking for? Like if you just had two bands, if you had a bass control and a treble control, what would you want them to do? I got a variety because I had my thoughts.
Yeah.
Everybody's got their thoughts of like,
Sure.
well, I kind of like this frequency center but shout out to Caleb Fisher, who I was out on the road with Ben Rector, who was at the monitor desk and just a killer engineer, just an inquisitive, wonderful audio mind. And we were talking and I was kind of giving him my thoughts. And he said, honestly, if I'm ever boosting bass, I want kind of a shelf concept where, especially at low boost ranges, I don't want to boost a narrow peak at a specific frequency like a graphic. It's like I kind of want to boost the low end.
Yeah.
And maybe not way down into the sub low end, but I want a wide.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh man, that's a really nice idea instead of just taking 80.
Yeah,
So
right,
many bass boost knobs are centered at a frequency and they might have a wide Q, but what can happen in that instance, right, is that like it really accentuates a certain note or couple notes on your instrument. This is more like when you start to click past noon. So, step 7, step 8, the boost range of the low end starts as a shelf.
It's super wide. Yeah.
Yes.
It's just a shelf bringing everything up.
Yep.
Right.
And then as you go into the range, it narrows the Q, right? Or the width of the shelf starts to become more of a bell, like a band pass.
It still stays fairly wide, right? We don't get carvy.
Right.
We're not like spiking up at 80. Yeah. Yeah.
And goes up to, I can't remember the tip top boost range of like dB. But,
Like 15, I believe.
okay.
Yeah.
Yep. And it's a healthy, up here.
15 is a lot.
It's a ton of low end.
We can also put over the screen Jason just made that number up. He doesn't know.
I've stared at a lot of graphs recently.
Sorry to put you on the spot. Like, let's talk specs now.
Yeah.
15.6.
What's the signal to noise ratio?
15.6, right? 15.6 decibels.
Yeah, 15.6 exactly.
But yeah, so it, as it goes up, it does turn into a bell. But then for me, in cut range, I never want to take a shelf and pull all the support out of my bass. Typically, I mean, I suppose you could do that, but what I want to do in terms of thinking about cutting low end is cutting sub frequencies forward. So I'm always thinking about a high pass filter. So if I'm cutting low end, I want to maybe cut the first one, maybe just a slope, cut everything below 30. And then as it goes back, I can't remember all the numbers, don't grill me, but it moves the high pass forward. So then in cut, you're not just chopping out all of the body and signal of your instrument, you're just cutting out sub frequencies that might destroy subs.
Right. You're pulling in from that farthest out low frequency and just bringing that in.
Yeah.
But it's a totally different filter than the boost, like completely. They're physically different. It's not just, let's just, cut using the same filters that we use to boost. This is flipped over completely to third order high pass filters, so we get real specific with what we're doing there.
And this because you had to assemble some of them, right? You had to put them together in all the film caps, and then the same thing in the high end, right? When you're boosting, it's boosting a nice big shelf of top, and it's centered somewhere well below 10. I can't remember where.
4-ish K maybe?
Yeah, 4-ish K. So it's not super bright and like sizzly up top. It's more like the punch, pick attack, finger attack. I love the sound of the treble control so much. Like it just makes your bass sound more present and brighter, but not in that like active bass zone. It feels like more like what a vintage pre-EQ would do. And then in cut, it's rolling treble off in a low pass filter way, right? Yeah.
Again, very, very specific cutoff frequencies that were dialed in by you and third order. So we're like it's not a gentle thing. It's like we're hacking it out.
Yes.
But starting up really high and then bringing that down. So
it's steep too.
That's what I mean.
Yeah. But I think that was kind of a surprise to me was how steep it is. And I've talked to you about this. I almost always just like run the tiniest bit of pulling back the tone knob on my bass.
Yes.
Which is a pretty slanted. So you're cutting, you're getting all this high stuff, but you're also cutting well into the high mids.
You are.
Right. It's very broad.
Is so steep that you can pull that, like, I like to pull a little of that like fret noisy type sound out. And now
But you leave the high mids and mids intact.
Exactly.
With your tone knob.
I can leave my tone knob. I can leave my tone knob wide open and just like pull 1 down, 2 down on this.
Yeah.
And I get the effect I wanted, but I don't lose that high mid stuff, which again is like, that's never what I would have thought of doing this. And between you and Ezra and Caleb and all of these people who got to put their hands into this.
Yes.
The first time I think you and I were looking at the curves on this final version, you were like, these first 2 steps, I'm not sure how that makes sense. Like,
because I hadn't been in that last conversation with you guys.
But then like once we like listened to it and heard it, you were like, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
like,
it's sort of, and I think you said it, it's sort of like a cab filter, right? It's that thing of like, especially if you have a bass that gives you a lot of real pristine tip top. And in a recording context, if that's getting in the way of cymbals, getting in the way of keys, if you have a clacky approach and you go, ooh, gosh, I don't know if I want all of that top end revealed, you can just pull low pass filter.
Yeah, the first 2 notches really are just like, let's just shape some of that.
Yeah, just pull some of that out.
Yeah.
It's so nice. And it can get kind of dark. I mean, if you run it like this, you can get super subby, dark. It's so cool. And of course, if you run it like this, like if you are boosting treble and then cutting out some of that sub, you can get a really super clear kind of vintage like pick. We were doing it on your Starfire.
On the Starfire.
Bass.
Yeah.
Oh man, so cool to get that kind of like plunky with not a ton of like sub information. It's really versatile because of the 3 EQ types. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the gain knob stepped in the middle. Or it's in the middle, stepped, same switch as the other ones. But then we're just sort of determining how much signal that we're going to drive into that output transformer, right? Which, yes, does change the overall output volume up and down.
Yep.
But then as we drive more into that output transformer, we get more harmonic content start to show up. More lively goodness kind of coming out. So,
but without ever like breaking up.
Correct.
Right. Yeah. It's not designed to be a grit box.
Right.
And that is something that was so important to me. There are pedals out there that are sort of console inspired and that can do the like diming
the
console,
strip,
like Beatles Revolver distortion thing. But I find for bass, I almost never want that sound. And I certainly don't want it in my DI.
Sure.
I don't even want a DI to be able to do it. Right. I would want it earlier in the chain, and I would want that specific sound. I want this to be never able to go into that level of clipping. I want it to like saturate the transformer in a way that's like really musical and pleasing and warm, but never be like,
right. It's the whole, like, it's not a dirt box, but it has its own sort of character to it, right?
That's just like the classic. Yeah, sorry.
No, it's what you hear, about different pieces of studio gear. People put stuff through gear with like no gain applied just so they can wash it through the transformer, right? A clean signal level, totally clean.
Yes.
That's kind of the idea here is like we're hearing those transformers and it just has a life of its own, but it's not meant to be at all like a broken overdrive distortion dirt box type unit.
Yep. It's just supposed to be an amazing platform, like you say, that classic studio gear. No one is ever like, oh man, I don't want to plug into the Neve because it's too colored. I've never heard a bass player say that. So and you guys too. So I referenced two of my favorite preamp transformer sounds, which is a 1073 Neve and a API 312, and then you guys took that and ran with it, and I think built custom brand new transformers. You guys, can you talk about that a little bit? Like,
I mean, like taking like those original designs and then coming up with our own that are inspired by that, just makes it easier for us to get a hold of them, makes it a little more consistent for production. That's kind of like some of the driving like reason behind that. But then combining the Neve and the API is really the magic, right? It's coming up with kind of our own thing. It's our own sort of sound, transformer inspired design with its own sound by blending those together, which is not something that you would commonly see.
No.
But I love it. Yeah. And when you pick that thing up, you know that there's some substantial stuff going on inside.
So heavy.
36 pounds.
36
it
weighs
pounds.
As much as an SVT, dude, just right here.
Yeah. He's just really strong. He's making it look that light.
Very strong. Also, I mean, we're not seeing it right now, but that center graphic lights up.
Yeah.
And you plug it in, you get the like warmed up, the light kind of fades in. Yeah.
Oh, it's so good. I also wanted to say just about the gain too. You have a pad on the side. So like if you have a super hot bass or like you want to run like a super hot line level synth into it, if you want to pad it and then play around with transformer sounds even more, you can. Just like you would on a Neve. You can drop, you can change your input level and then play around with how you're saturating the output transformer, which is very cool. But it's, you plug in at 9 volts, right? A standard 9 volt power supply. Ezra was telling me it's internally boosted to 24.
Yep.
Which is so sick.
Yep.
So headroom forever.
Headroom. Oh yeah.
Which is awesome, especially if you're running a bunch of stuff in front, octave pedals, synth pedals.
Oh, you use effects?
I do. I
didn't know that you were kind of an effect player.
That's very important.
You were like clean bass all the time, guys. It's all I ever want to hear.
Yeah. No, the funny thing is though, man, yesterday, I'm running all these effects through it and like, oh, sick. But honestly, my favorite moments were when I wasn't doing my standard hijinks.
Yeah.
Of fuzz and it sounds so good.
It does. It does. I also think though, it's really honest, like to what you're putting into it.
It is. Yes.
It's not like an effect,
right?
Where yes, a different effect sounds different depending on what guitar you're putting into it or how you're playing, but still like the flavor of it is imprinted on whatever you put. This isn't really that. It doesn't imprint enough that like it helps that you were putting in, you know, those Thunderbird pickups into it. You're playing into it. Like it's a really honest, like, just like gift wrapping of whatever you put into it.
It will give you a nice representation of what you put into it.
Yeah, but playing a Mustang through it with flats and playing your Thunderbird with those super bright rounds on it.
Right.
They sound completely different,
Totally different.
with the same settings on this, whatever. So it's like a really great representation of whatever you put in.
Yeah.
I dig that.
I do too. Yeah.
Thanks, Jason and Ezra.
I'm stoked. Yeah, it's so fun. Yeah, 1/4 inch out, right?
Yep,
XLR balanced out.
And the 1/4 inch out to mirrors all the moves you do here.
Yep.
So I like that. So, you know, of course, you're getting everything here. There's a ground lift, but we didn't put a pre-post switch on it. I love that we didn't do that.
Choices,
actually.
man.
Choices. So whatever you do here hits your front of house. So, be cautious. Like, do you really want to do this?
Maybe.
I don't know.
Maybe not.
Maybe not. And then also it hits the 1/4. So the 1/4 inch is tapped off of the output transformer?
They're split right before,
Dude.
Yeah.
So you get all the goodness.
Yep. It goes to both places, yeah. So it really is creating that like foundation for your tone, you know, where no matter where you're sending that.
Yeah. I'm going to take this.
Do it.
Me, dude. Yeah. And I remember actually when we were first talking about this, before it was called the Mantle, before it looked as gorgeous as it does, when it was just an idea.
Yeah.
Just an ugly old idea.
You were in an airport.
Yeah. I was in Chicago. It's funny. I was just back in that airport with Philip, our artist relations guy, and I literally stopped him at the spot and I was like, hey, do you know I was standing right there when Ian called me and told me about this thing for the first time? And we just like had a little laugh about it.
We have a lot of product ideas and conversations in airports.
Yeah, man.
Let's fly more often.
It's the best place to talk on the phone.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember when you called, I'm going to tease it just a tiny bit because you did pitch 2 ideas.
I did.
This is only one idea. I don't know if you guys know that. This is only one thing. But anyway, I remember asking you, like, is this a tube thing? Is this a what? And you were very explicit that this was not a tube. This was,
no.
You used the word solid state a lot of times when you were pitching what this should be.
Yeah. I think there is this, obviously tube gear is great.
Oh yeah.
Tube gear can be great. But there's this sort of misnomer, especially in bass world, that like tube gear is better.
Yeah.
It is not better. It's just different.
It's just different.
It's a different flavor of cool.
In some ways, it's definitely not better.
I know.
If you need to take it on the road, and then what can happen?
Dude, I've had 3 experiences. I'm thinking about 3 specific amazing products that I'm not going to say what they are, but I've had 3 separate things that have all gone down at consequential times, because it's not because they're bad products or they're poorly designed. It's because of the nature and the lifespan and longevity of tube architecture. And I have to say, I went through this whole thing of like getting the perfect tube amp and trying all the tubes and tube rolling and that whole thing. And I'm out on this gig playing like, oh, isn't everyone enjoying my like amazing tube tone? And then like a power tube dies and the amp just stops working. And guess what? Everyone notices more than your amazing tube tone.
When you're loud
when the bass is not
disappears.
there.
You're silent.
And it really taught me very quickly that like, oh, the bass needs to work. And I need to feel, you know what I mean? The bass needs to always be there.
You should run with that.
I know. Yeah. I feel like we should. And I feel like we did.
Yeah.
But like, I always want to step on stage or in a studio knowing that it's going to work, or like having confidence and not feeling like when I kick it out of standby or like, ooh, is the tube, oh, things are, oh, I tapped on the pedal and it's getting microphonic. I wonder if I should, dude.
Yeah.
And there's so many just from time in the studio, there's so many amazing sounds out there that are not tube driven.
Sure. Like you said, it's just different. It's not
Yep.
that it's better. It's different. And that's good.
Yes.
And there's a place for it. Absolutely.
Of course.
But there's a place for other
Dude,
stuff too, you know?
I thought that I was like tube guy.
Right.
Because of marketing, probably. Because it's been sold to me.
Yeah.
And I've discovered that, like, whoa, no, when I'm playing really excellent transformers and really like beautifully designed solid state pre's, I like it more. And I feel like they're bulletproof.
Yeah.
I feel like it's never gonna, like, something is never going to like flame out inside of it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Figuratively or literally.
right.
You know?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that gives me like a ton of confidence, especially on stage, that I'm never going, oh man, I wonder if I should have replaced the tubes
Yeah.
before the
Is
tour.
tonight the night. You
Yes.
know? Yeah.
And I really gives me a lot of peace of mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great. Well, I mean, why don't you talk about some of the early days? Like aha moment for you is around the EQ, but that came because in the early days, you had some ideas about EQ that we learned.
Yeah.
Like maybe we don't want to go that route.
I mean, there's just so much you can do
Yeah.
with EQ, and you think you know,
right.
because you've read forums and you've seen numbers on amps that you like or whatever, and you think you're like, oh yeah, 77 is the best boost point for bass.
Right.
Or like everyone has these biases.
Yeah.
And I think it's so, like, something about product design that is so cool to me is it helps you grow because it reveals that you don't know everything, or that your preconceived notions might not always be like truth with a capital T. So I remember getting the first prototype, and I think Ezra even included a few different bands of low end, like low, mid. And I immediately realized, oh, I don't want a low mid control. I think we can do it all with one low end control, but maybe, and that was the whole thing of like, maybe we're boosting a broad shelf instead. And then that turns into this.
I remember you had ideas like very pointed around what you wanted the EQs to do in the early days, which is great. And then we did that, you get it. And then I hear, we're making a second revision. And I was like, what are we changing? And Ezra's like, everything. And I was like, what do you mean everything?
I'm so sorry.
No, it's all good.
It's
It was
such
just
a
like,
pain.
this is, we're learning.
Yes.
That's why we're doing it. That's
Right.
why we're doing that.
But it's not just true of the Mantle. We experienced this with so many pedals where theory goes out the window
Real
with
fast.
the first prototype.
Yeah, it's not just me, guys.
No, like the first prototype, you think you know all of this,
Right.
and then you get hardware in your hands for the first time and you plug it in and you're like, oh, that's not it.
Right.
That's not it.
The first prototype is always the spot to jump off of.
Totally.
Right? It's never like we're gonna nail it.
Right.
I don't really want to think like that because
Yeah.
I want to be creative. And in our world, you've got to have a first prototype to then like riff on.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So like that's what it was.
But I will say the first prototype, I plugged it in, and my first thought, so I didn't mess with the EQ, I just plugged it in, and it sounded expensive.
Oh, right off the bat.
Yes.
Huh? Yeah.
You know that thing of like when
Yeah.
you plug in a great piece of gear and you're like, ooh,
Yeah.
like the bass was just like,
Yep.
you know, like
there.
it felt like forward and big, like everything was
Yeah.
represented. Like note image was really 3D.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, dang.
Yeah.
Like that was so,
That's
like
cool.
actually I get goosebumps thinking about it. Like it was really impactful
Yeah.
on like note one.
Just flat EQ.
Dude, just flat.
Just like going through the transformers.
And then like literally just stepping through gain. I was like, oh, like it was so sick. I'm like, wow. And then I was like, oh, well, that's great.
Yeah.
Hey, the basis of the pedal sounds amazing. Now let's nail the EQ.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know of another product. There might be something out there that I'm just unaware of, but I don't know of another product that has this same EQ functionality, that it is a completely different EQ in boost than it is in cut.
All under the roof of the same knob.
Yeah,
Right.
under the roof of the same knob. So, you know, even though it looks super simple design, there's only 3 knobs you can turn. Under the hood, it's like working this magic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Pretty cool. Oh, yeah, sure. It could absolutely work on anything that you want to plug in with a 1/4-inch input. But acoustic guitar,
I hadn't thought of that until just now.
dude, acoustic guitar would be so great because, you know, maybe a touch of brightness if you want, and then the like high pass filter, just like stepping down, getting rid of 30, 60, 80, like stepping out that sub bottom, and then playing with where you want the gain to be.
The character from the Transformers of the acoustic guitar
might be really great.
Cool.
Yeah. Synths for sure. Just like plugging in a mono synth like a Moog into it would be wildly cool. I mean, honestly, I think outside of a bass application, you could just sort of think of it like a great channel strip. So
it has unique EQ.
Yeah.
Right? It does its thing.
Yep.
And like a lot of channel strips in the studio, you plug whatever you want into them to do that thing. You know, we say that thing all the time in the studio. It just does that thing. This has its own version of that. So
yeah, pretty soon just make 500 series, rack them all up, 8 channels of it.
Yeah.
8 channels of Mantle. Let's go.
I like it.
8 channels of Mantle.
500 series, but the knobs are wider than the
yeah, right. Yeah, they overlap.
That's funny.
Sorry to whatever's next to it in the lunchbox, but we're not downsizing our knobs.
Nope.
That's good.
No.
One, obviously we're so proud of this, but two, like other products that we've released recently, I can see a DFX1 over there, whatever, like having somebody working on this with us that like, you're not just, you know, we're musicians here, but like we don't have to live and breathe the road, the studio, the way that you do. And so like getting to have you, frankly, nitpick and call Ezra and me and Jason a million times to just say like, this is close, but it's not there. Right. Yeah. And not just say it's not good enough, but like, here is what I wish this one, down to like the individual clicks. We were just talking about how the click amount between, on the treble side, between 6, 5, and 4.
Yep.
4, 3, 2, 1 were great, but just the amount of shift between those just needed to move ever so slightly.
It did. It needed to move back.
Like a month ago.
Yes.
Like no joke. Like really, a month ago.
It had to.
Yeah.
That's what makes me so proud of this thing. Is that little stuff is like having somebody like you with the ear for that and the experience for that to just be like, you know, it's really good.
Yeah.
It's not perfect. Like what if we, and nothing's ever going to be perfect.
Sure.
Like I guarantee you, if you ask Jason, if you ask Ezra, if you ask others, it's like, oh, I wish there was this one little thing.
Of course.
Because that's the nature of engineers and, you know, whatever. But like, it's really cool.
It's really good.
Yeah. I mean, there's 3 knobs. There are 11 positions per knob. And there's really no position that we didn't like just spend time thinking about this position on this knob and then this position on this. They are all like very much like labored over, you know, so it's completely intentional, everything, every position on every knob. So yeah, really proud of it.
Well, me too. And I only want to be involved with the product if I think it's going to bring something to the table that is needed and cool, and not just something that's like, oh, this is just for me and my weird use case.
Yeah.
Like I want it to be like, I really think a bunch of bass players, musicians in general, are going to be like, this is great. Like, thank you for making this, you know, because that's how I feel. I'm like, oh, thank you for saying yes, because it's sort of it's a bold ask, right? It's not inexpensive and it's simple. And so you see it and you might think, well, geez, what am I getting for this money? But you're getting so much, and you're getting ease of use and like beautiful sound, like the heart of your rig,
right.
Which I think is really compelling. And I want to spend money on products like this. Yeah. Like that's what I want to spend my money on. And it's what I want to spend my time developing too. So thanks for saying yes to the idea. Yeah.
It's been a lot of fun.
Cool.
Yeah. Thank you for joining the Denim Dan podcast.
Denim Dads
Triple
podcast.
D.
I mean, Dog Dad. But
Dog Dad.
Yeah.
Diners, drive-ins, and denim. Mantle denim wear coming to a store near you, to a structure near you.
Canvas
the canvas
Zippo.
lighter.
Yeah.
Light.
Whoa.
Nice.
Cheap.
All right. Okay.
Sweet.